name is Emily Burak, and I'm the president and co-founder of the Book Festival.
And I'm Sarah McCraw-Crow, and I am board chair and also co-founder of the Book Festival. And we are back for year 2 of the New Hampshire Book Festival.
We are super excited for this special evening with the amazing Walter Mosley. And we're thrilled once again to stand on this stage and just talk about this wonderful community celebration for books. We wanted to thank all of our readers and authors for your support. Many of our authors are actually here tonight in the house, and I would love it if you would all stand and give a round of applause to our authors, if the authors could stand.
Yay! Yay,
Wow.
authors!
Fantastic. These authors will be around all day tomorrow for an entire day of free panels and book signings, and we will be closing off South Main Street, and everything starts at 9 with a children's costume. Their costume parade is going to kick off the festival. Kids are coming dressed as their favorite book character. And then the official panels begin at 9:30. Please come right away at 9:30 so you don't miss anything.
And we just want to say that we could not put on this festival without our stellar partners, and we've got a bunch of them. Gibson's Bookstore, who we love, Capital Center for the Arts, New Hampshire for the Center for the Book, and our wonderful grantors, the City of Concord, the Judge Family Foundation, New Hampshire Humanities, and the Academy of American Poets. And all our wonderful donors, our bookshelf donors and beyond, we're super grateful to you all.
Thank you so much. And this festival also would not exist without our amazing presenting sponsor, Ledyard Bank. I think I mentioned last year, we were brand new, we hadn't started, and they stepped up and said, hey, we'll be your presenting sponsor, and made it possible for this to begin here, for it to be born in Concord. So thank you, Ledyard Bank. We're thrilled this year to welcome our first ever health and wellness sponsor, Convenient MD, who's been fantastic. We have Grapponi Automotive Group, Eversource, Shaheen and Gordon, Delta Dental, She & Finney, Polaris Direct, Hopkinton Rotary, Raffiung and Pignatelli, Merrimack County Savings Bank, and Margaret Porter and her books. So thank you so much, everybody. And just a quick, a true sign of the commitment of our sponsors are that many of them are also our volunteers. So thank you. It really, really means a lot.
But we don't want to forget our media partners, our wonderful media partners, who are NHPR, the Concord Monitor, Boston Globe, New Hampshire PBS, Louis Carno, and Concord Community TV.
Thank you. So we're offering them and all of you who came out tonight our deepest and sincerest thanks for bringing this festival to life. And now here is the amazing Josephine Moran, President and CEO of our presenting sponsor, Ledyard National Bank. And she will introduce our moderator and our wonderful keynote tonight. So Josephine, can you come out?
Well, thank you so much, Emily and Sarah, and thank you to everyone involved in the New Hampshire Book Festival. It is an amazing event, and I am so thrilled to be here with all of you. So we are here tonight for the exciting kickoff keynote with acclaimed author Walter Mosley. Ledyard is so pleased to be the event sponsor for the second amazing year of the New Hampshire Book Festival. Last year's inaugural event offered us more than we possibly could have imagined. It was a vibrant celebration of books featuring more than 50 nationally recognized authors and poets. This year promises to be even more exciting with Tui Sutherland as the beloved children's keynote coming tomorrow, free panels, and a street fair all day long. that will feature over 50 nationally recognized authors and poets for children, adults, and families. There is something for everyone at the New Hampshire Book Festival. We're very honored to be part of this event. We at Ledyard believe in community, in literacy, and bringing together readers and writers of all ages to engage in meaningful discussion. It's this type of conversation that makes Concord and New Hampshire special, and why we at Ledyard are so dedicated to our New Hampshire communities. And now on to tonight's event. It's time to introduce this evening's moderator, Hank Phillippi Ryan. Hank Phillippi Ryan is USA Today's best-selling author of 16 psychological thrillers, winning the most prestigious awards in the genre: 5 Agathas, 5 Anthonys, and the coveted Mary Higgins Clark Award. She is also an on-air investigative reporter for Boston's WHDH-TV, with 37 Emmys and dozens more journalism honors for her groundbreaking journalism and true crime stories. National book critics call her a superb and gifted storyteller. Hank is on the board of International Thriller Writers, a sought-after teacher and keynote speaker, and host of 3 popular online live events: The Back Room, Crime Time on a Mighty Blaze, and First Chapter Fun. She lives in Boston with her husband, a nationally renowned criminal defense attorney. Her new novel, All This Could Be Yours, is just out from Minotaur Books and is an instant New York Times bestseller. Please join me in welcoming Hank Phillippi Ryan.
Thank you so much, everyone. It is so great to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming. What a treat to be able to hang out with people who love books and love reading and love storytelling. And I am so honored to be invited to be here tonight. It is such an exciting moment to be with Walter Mosley. Sometimes people get up at moments like this and they say, here's a person who needs no introduction. That's so frustrating, because of course they do. Of course they need an introduction. Walter Mosley is the coolest person in the world, and that's my introduction. Okay. Okay, I'll tell you more. He's brilliant and hilarious and generous and a marvelous teacher and a genius writer. Specifically, Walter Mosley is the author of 60 critically acclaimed works of fiction, nonfiction, memoir, and plays. His work has been translated into 25 languages. From his first novel, Devil in a Blue Dress, with protagonist Easy Rawlins, I heard applause out there, to his newest, Gray Dawn, he is an icon of storytelling. He's had several books adapted for film and TV, including Devil in a Blue Dress, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray, starring Samuel Jackson, and The Man in My Basement, starring Willem Dafoe, which my husband and I are watching right now. It is tender and poignant and terrifying and sinister. His short fiction, not The Man in the Basement short fiction, Walter Mosley's short fiction and essays have been published in a wide range of outlets, including the New York Times, the LA Times, and The Nation. He has won numerous awards, including an O. Henry Award, the Mystery Writers of America's Grand Master Award, a Grammy, several NAACP Image Awards, and PEN America's Lifetime Achievement Award. It is such an achievement for us to have Walter Mosley here with us this evening. Welcome to Walter Mosley. How many of you have read a Walter Mosley book? What do you think when you see that? Use your mic, Walter. You know how to do this.
What do I think? That's nice. I like it that you read my books. It's funny. I mean, being I'm glad that you read my books. Don't get me wrong. and I'm even happier that you bought them. But the idea is it's such a sharing idea, writing, and books are they're so interesting. They go out into the world and they affect the people who read them, and those people affect other people. It's a really kind of big. Some people could raise their hand, they didn't read it, but maybe they did.
You said it's such a sharing idea, writing. Talk a little bit about that, because you're by yourself wherever you write, and after a year or so, you come out, and here are all of these people eager to hear what you have to say, and who are reading your book. That book goes out to them, and they have the experience that you've offered them. How do you think about that?
Well, I have a really very specific way of thinking about it. It's when somebody writes a novel, short story, even nonfiction, there's a lot of creativity in it because of the kinds of things you have to do in order to get a story together in words. But the thing that people think about less, I think, is that reading is just as creative. A person who starts to read, just one word after another, all of a sudden there's a person, a place, an action, a sound, an event, a tragedy, a comedy, sex, all the stuff is there. And you create that because it's just words. I tell people the story that maybe 20, 25 years ago I was doing a reading, and a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, Mosley, you got that guy Mouse. He lives in that blue house on Tinker Street, right? And down in Watts." And I go, "Yeah?" And he says, "I was born in that house." Now, I made up that house. But that doesn't change the fact that he was born in that house. And that's what's extraordinary about writing. He, in his mind, he conjured up a place, and he knew it. He knew it intimately. And it's just, that's how writing, it moves. It moves through our minds, not necessarily conversation or, on the phone or on the street, but in a way, a very intimate connection between all of us.
Do you picture or think about your readers picturing the book and putting themselves in the dream of your book?
I actually don't quite understand that question. Can you?
Well, how about this? Do you think about your readers when you're writing, or do you think about making a little movie in their mind to come out? It's like you have to really trust your readers or open yourself to your readers to see the book that you meant to write for them.
And, it's interesting. I don't know how to say that. Like, I write my books. People used to ask me who was my audience, and I used to always say my cousin, Alberta Jackson. And my cousin, Alberta Jackson, would be sitting she'd be sitting next to me. And she'd say, "Well, what's going on, Walter?" And I said, "Well, Mouse is in trouble again." She said, "Oh, no, did he drag Easy into that?" And I said, "Yeah, Albert, I think he did." And now Easy doesn't know what to do. Now, we're having that conversation, but there's somebody who we don't know seating behind us, overhearing that conversation. And, that's my audience. But I don't really think about them, It's not that I don't care about them, but I don't think about them. I do the best that I can. Like any person dancing, I think, if you're performing in a dance, you're doing the best that you can. But how do you know what, there are people who think differently than me, speak different languages than me, that are smarter than me. A lot of times I'll do a reading and somebody will say, "Well, Mosley, if you put these things together, it turns out to be this." And I never even thought that, but I go, yeah, I wrote that. And now you're the one who understands it, but I wrote it,
I know. I had my editor once say, I handed in a manuscript, and she said, "Oh, I love your book about redemption." And I'm like, yeah, redemption, totally what I meant that to be. But that's the thing that's so cool about the dance with the book that you're talking about, is that you're saying, when you give them Gray Dawn, you're saying, "Come here, I'll be your partner in this. Do you want to dance with this book?" Do you think about the experience that the reader is having?
No.
No?
No. I mean, it's really true. I've been trying not to say that to you, so.
That's okay.
That's
No,
why I have all
wanna
these
know-
other stories.
I want to know the thing.
But no, I don't think about it. And when I say I don't think about it, it doesn't mean I don't care. That I've created. I'm telling this story about whatever character I'm writing about. Right now, it's this thing about Easy, and I do my best to breathe life into Easy, into Mouse, and to all these other people in the book, and then I just send it out into the world, and it's really true. I hope people like it. I don't expect people to like it, but I hope they do.
You don't expect them not to like it. I mean, you must
I expect
love
some
it.
people
You
not
must
to like it. I'm very. I'm very graphic, and a lot of people. Everybody doesn't want something to be graphic. And I have all kinds of different things going on, and so people might like it, they might not like it, or they like it, but they don't like it that their 16-year-old daughter is reading it, it's what happens, it's just a thing, it's like you can't really worry about what people are thinking, you can't, because once you start thinking about somebody liking something or not liking it. Then that kind of organizes you to say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and I have to do this and this, And I know a lot of writers who think like that, but
And that's exactly what I was going for. That's exactly what I
Okay.
was going for, because I should have just said that, right?
No, it's okay.
That's exactly what I was going for, because you have to love it in whatever way you love it. When you're writing, and then I would talk specifically about your writing and your life and how you write in your books, do you like it when you're doing it? Do you sit down at your computer or whatever every day and say, oh boy, I can't wait to do this?
I love writing. Love it, love it, love it. I write every day, 365 days a year, for 3 hours a day, every morning. And I just think it's fantastic. It's like the best thing that you can do. That's the way I feel about it. It's more important. People used to ask. Well, people always ask me because I'm. I don't know how successful I am, but I'm somewhat successful. And I'm that successful. That's how. But I have a life. I know other writers. I know actors and singers and all that kind of stuff. And people ask, well, what's the best part of it? And the best part of it is writing. It's more important. It's more important than getting published, actually, for me.
When you sit down in those 3 hours every day, do you have an intent of what you're going to write that day, or do you just see, or is a little of each, or something totally different?
Well, it's like a concatenation. So I wake up one day and I write for 3 hours. I usually get about 1,000 words out of that, and then I stop writing. I just start doing other things. But the writing goes on in the back of your mind the whole day, all night. And then the next day when I wake up, there are new thoughts in there. I'm starting from word 1001. I reread the 1,000 words, and then I start 1001. I start writing, and I realize that there are new things that I was thinking that developed on their own. And I blame being able to write every day. If you do it every day, you keep on point with the writing.
Dennis Lehane used to talk about how he thought about his book so much that when he got home, he wondered why the manuscript didn't have more words in it, because he had thought about it so much. But I wonder, do you know where the book is going when you write those 1,000 words? Or do you have an intent of where it to head?
In some ways, I have a general idea of where it's going. And in other ways, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I think that's really, for me, that's very important. Because, reading, a book starts from the beginning, goes to the end. But that's not necessarily how people write. They might write the middle, they might write the end, they might, jump around. I usually write from beginning to end. But when I get to the end, I reread the book. And then I start saying, well, what happened here? Why was I saying there? Why is this going on? this is bad. And I'll make changes, but that, 20 times, 25 times, I'll do that. And so the writing becomes a different thing than a beginning to end.
And is that fun for you, that treasure hunt of editing, when you're seeing what you meant to write and putting the pieces together and taking out what's not the book and picking exactly the right words? Is that fun?
Well, it's all fun. I mean, it's like, yeah, you could say, well, is this fun? It's like when you're talking to a little kid, is this fun? How about this?
No,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. It's like you're seeing, you do your first draft and you're doing the best job you can do. And then at some point you go back and see what you have, right? And you see how to pull the strings and change the words and fix the motivation. Am I totally wrong here? You're like,
No, I'm thinking about what you're saying. I think that when I reread it, I see something and I say, oh, that's wrong. And hopefully I have an answer right then. Often I don't. I say, oh, that's wrong. God, how's that ever going to work? Wait a second. If this happened, this could have never happened. Oh, no. But he made a decision over here about that. And, the structural stuff, it becomes, it can be very challenging. But I like writing, so it doesn't matter. But it's sometimes I can say, oh, that's wrong. I'll just do this, and sometimes no.
I mean, there's wrong in a continuity kind of way, and then there's wrong in an emotional kind of motivational kind of way.
Yeah, and also a plot way. The other thing is things happen in a series of events, and no matter what it is, it could be easy and it could be really difficult. You say, oh, this character would never do this. But you kind of need that character to do this. And you say, oh my God, but he can't do that. So what am I going to do? Sometimes it really throws me off. Sometimes it really throws me off.
And when it does throw you off, what do you do to get back?
I don't know.
Thank you so much for that. That's
well, but it's like that. There's different answers to different questions at different times. For instance, I wrote a book called John Woman. I really love this book. It's a book about a deconstructionist historian. It sounds really boring, but it's not at all. But it took me 17 years to write the book, and I got to one point in the book. I said, I don't know what to do. I actually don't know what to do. And about every 2 or 3 years, I come back to it, and I read through, and I go, I still don't know what to do. And it happened again and again and again. And finally, one day, it was so silly. I said, well, why don't I just outline the rest of the book? And then it won't be my responsibility. It will be an outline. And that actually worked. It was interesting. It was...
I've never made an outline, so I'm in awe of this.
Well, I don't do it often, But I said, but I couldn't figure out any other way. I couldn't, I just said, I'll just write.
But isn't that so great that you figured out a way to solve the problem of the book that you loved? I mean, what do you think about your thought process that you could figure that out, to do something that you'd never done before?
Well, it's great, but you have to add to it. Isn't that great that it only took you 17 years to figure out how to write an outline?
No, I think that is a great. I think that is a great thing. It must be frustrating, but the result is wonderful. The result is wonderful.
It was I liked the book. I really enjoyed it. Like that where I got to with it. I have this. I have a theory that I think is true, that the best way to make it in the society that we live in is if you're, to some degree or another, a sociopath.
I'm going to have to ask you to go on about that.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, because if you're a good person or a normal person, an everyday person living in your community, if you have a 97-year-old woman that you rent the house in the back to, when she gets, her kids go away and she forgets who she is, and you can't pay the rent, and a good person will say, well, I'll help, I'll do the shopping, and I'll do this and that, and I'll try to connect you with people who can help you. A sociopath just kicks you out and brings somebody else in. And those are the people who make it, because they get richer and richer where you get poorer and poorer. And it's the system we live in. It really,
So I'll tell you what this really reminds me of, though, Easy Rawlins, is, how he's living in a system of push and pull and have not, and making things work and making decisions and dealing with people who are sociopaths and trying to figure out his own self. Can you talk about Easy a little bit and where he came from and how it fits into that?
It's so hard, because writing is the writing is the thing. I was writing a story, maybe 1987, something like that, and there was a guy, and he was the narrator. I didn't know anything about him, though. He was a narrator. He was living in Fifth Ward, Houston, Texas, and he was having a rent party. And so, he had some, a couple of barrels of beer and some, bootleg whiskey, and some musicians playing, because he didn't have a record player or anything, but he had musicians playing. And everybody who came to the door gave him a dime. And he would take the dime and usher them in. And then a woman comes in, Etta Mae Harris. She comes in, and she's, and she's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And she's just fine. And he just loves her. He didn't even ask for the dime. He just said, "Come right on in, Etta." She goes, "Yes." She goes in. And he's thinking, I would tell her I love her if it wasn't for, and the next person comes, Mouse. Mouse is dressed better than Etta. And he's, got all of his silver teeth. And he looks at the narrator and smiles, hands him a dime, and says, "Hey, Easy, how you doing?" And I realized, this is the guy I'm writing about, Easy Rawlins. I realized that then, it was, a few months later, I realized, well, they all belong together, but Easy is the person who's going to tell the story. And from there, and in a way, he has his own character in life, and he's proud. He doesn't want to work for people who don't treat him with respect. He wants to help people in his own community because he realizes they don't get help. There's wonderful things about Easy, but he also represents, in a way, that whole community, and he's able to tell that larger story, so much so that I can do it in first person.
I mean, you were saying in your author's note that you don't generally introduce Easy because he speaks for himself, has spoken for himself in the novels. How does that translate into Grey Dawn? We see Easy moving through various, levels of society, and how he even he is aware of how he deals with different people in different ways. Talk a little bit about writing that and how you do that.
And he's aware of it, but nobody else is. So am I talking about Grey Dawn, or am I talking about...
Whatever you want.
Oh, okay. I just want to know. Grey Dawn's an interesting book. Grey Dawn, those two words are almost like the first two words of the novel, because he's realizing something, and he's sad, and he has two kids that he's adopted. His son Jesus is off in a boat someplace fishing, and his daughter, who's still in high school, is in France studying at the University of Dijon. He's living in a house that's been given him a 99-year lease among 6 or 7 other houses at the top of a mountain that this woman owns. The whole mountain she owns. And they have 5 Sicilian bodyguards guarding the place. It's like the quintessential gated community. It's like as if he was a millionaire, and he's, he has a good life, good money. He can take care of anybody and anything he needs to. But he's left who he was. He's left where he came from, and he doesn't hate where he came from. Isn't that like that, that kind of American dream where you leave where you love so you can have what you want? He loves his people. And somehow he just kind of drifted away. He was talented enough to get kind of taken away from it. And this book is about him trying to get back to that and how dangerous that is.
Yeah, you were saying that he's one of the most dangerous people you'll ever meet, is what you say about him.
He's the most dangerous person you'll ever meet.
What does that mean?
Well, because you have no idea who he is. White people at that time, I don't really believe in the existence of white people, but so-called white people believe it, so I guess it's true. But if he's around, white people, they say, well, he can't possibly understand what I know because, of a misconception of who he and a lot of people like him are. He's around black people and say, well, they're going to think the same thing. He said, well, he don't, he's around here. He's not in anything, But wherever he is, he's always somebody else. He can understand things going on with you that even you don't understand. And it's a real talent, and detectives have different talents, but this one is he can understand your motivations. And most of the time we understand maybe 20% of our motivations. We don't know why we're doing things. We don't know why we're in love with that person or this person, why we hate that person, but we would love them if we would just go like that. It's so interesting, but Easy can see it, and that's him. Yeah, go on.
And, well, I was going to say, I'm sort of thinking through the scenes in Grey Dawn of how he talks to so many people and asks them questions and gauges what they need and what they want and how to behave with each person. And he can understand that just by seeing an expression on their face or the gesture that they make or how they form their sentences. Talk a little bit about that talent that he has. I mean, that's a real detective talent, and it's also a really emotional talent. But then you have to write that. You have to create that. You have to do that dialogue and that back and forth.
Well, when you come from a community, where you have to withhold most of your emotions, you have to withhold what you think, how you feel, You have to, if you come from the South in the 20s and the 30s, and some woman walks by with a skirt up to her pupik, as my mother used to say, you can't look. You better not look. And you can't. There's so much that you can't do that you're holding back. It gives you a lens to understand how other people are doing the same kinds of things. You begin to understand, oh, yeah, I see what's happening there. My father told me, my father was a custodian for the Board of Education in Los Angeles, and he was like a supervisor, whatever. And he bought property, which was good to do in the 70s in California. But so he made a good deal of money, but he worked at a school. And every 2 years he bought a Cadillac, a brand new Cadillac. And he never drove that Cadillac to school. Never. And one day I said, Dad, because he had my mother drove a Ford Galaxy 500. She didn't care. But he drove her Ford Galaxy to school, and she drove the Cadillac, because my mother's Jewish. And so he said, that's okay, they would expect that. And so, he told me, he said, Walter, I can't do that. If I drove a Cadillac to school, my relationship with everybody else who worked at that school would be destroyed. And one day he had to drive it. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, Mr. Brown? And I said, yes. Well, Mr. Brown came up to me and said, Mosley, I saw you driving in a Cadillac, Eldorado. How come? What, you rent that? And he said, no, it's mine. And he said, well, how could that be yours? He goes, I can't even buy a Cadillac. And I understood what he meant, that the fact that who my father was not who anybody thought my father was. And he kept it that way until that day. And then he transferred to another school. But, And that's the kind of life that I was used to being around. People, making choices, having thoughts, often having thoughts that were wrong, doing things that were worked against your life. Anyway.
Well, so back then, when your dad was not driving the Cadillac, how did you feel about that? You didn't want to be a writer then. That wasn't who you were at that point, was it?
No, I was in California. And it was the 60s, my God. You know, I wanted to get high, you know. But no, I was very interested in, you know, my father was a really powerful guy, mentally. And
But he's not easy, Rawlins, your father.
no, he's more like Mouse than was like
Okay.
Easy. Yeah. But still, you know, that's the thing. You know, nobody ever. People try to say that they write about people. I came to my dad. He read Devil in a Blue Dress, and I said, Dad, a lot of people seem to think that I based this on you. What do you think? And he goes, I don't see it. You know, that's not me. I'm not that guy. You know. So,
Which he would say.
Huh?
Which is what Easy would say.
yeah, but Easy would see it. My father really didn't see it. He went, that doesn't look like me at all. You know.
So when did you start writing?
I was 35, I guess. I was working as a computer programmer for Mobile Oil on 42nd Street in Manhattan. It was a Saturday because I was a consultant, and it was a Saturday, and so I got tired of writing code, and so on the.
I can't even picture you writing code.
You can't?
No, because, okay, here's how it looks. Oh, now I see it. Now I totally see it. I can totally see it. I mean, I'm just talking about mentally. You're so imaginative. Does it take a different imagination to write code than it does to write a story?
It takes a lot of imagination and back then to be a computer programmer. To explain it to you, like, you know, today people have to get master's degrees and, like, you know all this, like, math and all this stuff about, you know, programming. Back when I was doing it, there were no classes really, except, you know, cheater classes somewhere. But so all you had to really do was go someplace and say, well, I studied computer programming and I want to be a programmer here, and they would hire you. It was like a cowboy job, you know. It wasn't like it wasn't like today. You know, there was no education. You learned on the job, and you were willing to do something you didn't understand. So, you know, and that's a lot like writing.
But did you like that?
I like everything I do. You know, I'm an only child from California. I like everything. Anything I've ever done, I've liked. You know, I'm smart enough to know that if I did it forever, I'd be very unhappy. But while I was working, this is better than working at McDonald's. This is better than working, you know, like breaking stones, you know, in a quarry in Barrie, you know.
But then at some point, yes, indeed. But at some point, then you started thinking about writing from your imagination in a different way.
At some point, and this is the point. I was on that Saturday. I was working at Mobile Oil, and I wrote, on hot, sticky days in southern Louisiana, the fire ants swarmed. And I went, wow, I've read some books, and it sounds like some beginning of some of the books I read, and it has to be fiction because I've never been to Louisiana, and I've never seen a fire ant at that time. And so I said, I made it up, so it has to be fiction, and I just kept from there, you know.
You clearly remember that, right? You remember that moment. How did you feel at that moment? Like, I'm going to write a book now, or did you think a new world has opened up, or do you think I wish I had seen a fire ant, or what?
I thought, this is interesting. You know, it's so funny because, you know, when you're a kid, in order to be happy, you have to laugh. But I was just saying, wow, this is really good. You know, this could work. You know, maybe I could actually, if I could write a whole bunch more sentences like that, then I'd be a writer. It wasn't like excitement really. You know, there are moments that are exciting. You know, there are moments that it's like when somebody becomes a writer. Somebody says, "Who influenced you?" This happens all over this book tour I've been on. People say, well, who influenced you? I know what they want me to say. You know, they want me to say James Baldwin and Herman Melville and, you know, Flannery O'Connor and, you know, because these are people who read books but I'm influenced by my father and by his friends and by my mother and by her family and by where everybody has been, what they've experienced. The purpose of being a writer, if you come from any kind of group that's not people who consider themselves the main group, then you know that if you don't put your people in literature, they won't exist. They just don't exist. And that's what influences me, those people.
And at the point that you started writing, how did people applaud you like the people in the audience are doing today, or did they say forget about it?
Well, they didn't do either. They didn't. Either one would have been better than saying, "Huh?" Like you come up to somebody and you say, "I'm a writer," and they go, "Oh, yeah, I wrote when I was in college. What else do you do?" It's like anything else,
What happened after that? So you had your fire ant sentence, and then how did you create the possibility, the potential that the writing thing could work?
Well, I kept writing. I did little things, and then there was a guy who had a house, and he was a poet, and he wanted to teach a poetry and fiction workshop, and he had all these people. He just wanted money, and we gave him money, but he did teach us some very good things. But then he kicked me out. I'm not really sure why. And so then I went to City College and said, well, I'll go here, and I got into the graduate writing program up there, and I just started writing and writing and writing and writing, and finally. One of the great things there, something that really does excite me is certain people who I love. Edna O'Brien was teaching there, and she was my teacher in fiction, and Edna O'Brien, she's the most beautiful woman in the room, always. She was the best writer. She had this incredible brogue that she would read your stories out loud, and they were great. And one day, she had read some things that I had written, and she said, Walter, write a novel. Like that. I just like that.
Write a novel?
Yeah, write a novel. Yeah, it's like, what are you doing, these short stories? You can't do anything with that. She knew that, She said, write a novel. And so I did. I wrote a book called Gone Fishing, which it was the first Easy Rawlins book, but I published it after Devil in a Blue Dress.
So that was the first Easy Rawlins book. And then what happened with that?
Well, I'd been working at it, and then I decided, I went to an event in Florida somewhere, and this guy named Max Rodriguez was talking, and he said, well, it was a Black Writers Conference, and they were saying, well, all you people out there, I know you go to these big white publishers, and you publish these books, but he said, but if you're successful, every once in a while, you could give a book to a small Black publisher, and they could, have money, which is true, I only get like 10% of the cover, but 90% goes to this publisher. But if I gave it to a small Black publisher, well, it would still be 90%, but it would go to, a community that I was interested in. So I found this guy, Paul Coates, the father of Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he was also the head of the Black Panthers in Baltimore in the 60s. And Paul and I, we became like the best of friends. I said, here, Paul, publish this book. Let's see what we can do. And we did. It was great. We published it and went around the country. He was able to build up the company more. It was great.
And then what happened with, yes.
Thank you.
Those dominoes that fall in our lives of decisions that we make and things that we do, and we don't know what the reason for it is at the time, or we think we know the reason for what it is at the time, and then they turn into something else. When did Devil with the Blue Dress evolve?
Well, I had Gone Fishing before I gave it to Paul, and I sent it out, and it was well, it's funny now. It wasn't tragic then, though. Like, I sent it to all these people, and they all said, this is very good writing, you're a very good writer, but this book is not commercial. And the book was, it's Easy and Mouse. They're in their late teens, Easy just needs to get away, and Mouse would like to kill his stepfather. Both things happen, and that's it. Mostly, it's about them, about these two guys in this made-up town named Pariah, Texas, in between Louisiana, the border between Louisiana and Texas, and that was it. And so the publishers and the agents and all these other people told me, it would say, white people don't like Black people. Black women don't like black men, and black men don't read. So who's going to read your book? None of that was true, but it was true because they thought it was true, but it wasn't true. And then but it didn't bother me. I said, okay, because most people don't get their first books published anyway, so then, who cares? So I wrote another book, which was Devil in a Blue Dress, and I didn't realize it was a mystery until I was more than halfway through it.
What was the moment where you realized it? Don't say when someone killed somebody.
No, it was that he was doing detective work. I mean, really, somebody hired him to find a woman, and then he realized that the guy who hired him is actually bad news, and then he meets the woman, and he's really crazy for her, and I was like, wow, this is noir, and I went, I could make it a mystery, and then everybody wanted to publish it, except one publisher. One publisher said there already is a black detective.
That's great. What did you say?
I said,
now there's two.
No, I said, well, there's plenty of white detectives. And he said, I don't get what you mean.
Is that true?
Yeah.
There's a moment of silence for you. But you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of your dialogue. You are such a genius at dialogue because your characters and your setting and the dialogue are completely seamless in the novels. None of it could take place anywhere else but where it is. None of it could take place with any other people than who they are. How do you think about that? How do you hold that whole story in your head, that whole thing?
Well, one thing, I always tell everybody this. A novel is bigger than your head.
A novel is bigger than your head.
Yeah. If you can hold a whole novel in your head, then it's not a novel yet. Because it has to be, it's such a major experience. And there are all these different places and things. That's the reason you go through it. If it was the size of your head, you could write it in one draft. You could just write it all out. So, well, this is what happened, and that was happening. Huh? And some people do that because of their experience. But what I do, is a very technical answer to your question. I write a novel. I write the beginning end. And then I rewrite, and I rewrite, and I rewrite, and I rewrite. And somewhere around 10 or 12, I go, I'm making mistakes. Because, like if you read something that you've written more than a couple of times, you're no longer reading it, you're kind of remembering it. And you make all these mistakes. So then what I do is I read it out loud into a tape recorder. Not that they make tape recorders anymore, but when they used to, in the old days, I would read it out loud into a tape recorder. And that was a great experience because you would hear, nobody talks like that. Nobody would say that. That's not what my cousin Fontenot used to say, And you can fix it. And then when you listen to it, like from the tape recorder, you fix it even more.
And you hear unintentional rhyme and repetition and things that are ridiculous.
You find a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's really helpful. But do you laugh when you're writing your novels? Do you laugh when you read some of your dialogue? It's so charming and so surprising.
Not as much as when I read it out loud to people. I'll be reading something, I go, blah, 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 and people go, ha, 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 ha. And I go, what are they laughing at? But, because I'm in the action of their lives. You have somebody like Jackson Blue, one of my favorite characters. And, he's little, he's scrawny, he's a genius, but he's stupid. He's a coward, because he knows what could happen. Most other people don't know what's going to happen. They just keep on moving ahead. And he says, no, wait a second, that could get you killed, And so when when I'm writing it, I'm feeling like Jackson. And he's just afraid of things. But when I read it out loud, people are like, wow, this is really funny. He's so stupid,
That's what that's interesting. And we're running out of time, I think. And I want you to think of some questions to ask Walter in about 5 minutes or so. How do you, when you're writing about a character, how do you become that character, see through their eyes, hear through their ears, feel what's in their heart?
I feel them saying things and hearing things. And also, Aristotle and the dialectic. I think it's really good, like because it was one thing that one person is saying something, like a narrator is saying something, but when people start talking to each other, you know, you can start to feel the friction, you know, between them. You know, you can and feel the heat or the cold or the fear or the oncoming of violence. You know, it's hard to say, like, you know, I'm not Easy Rawlins. I know, and I would never want to be Easy Rawlins. It was too scary for me. But you know, but I feel, you know, I identify with him in a way.
So, but let me ask you a really strange question. Where do the names come from? The names of you must get asked this all the time, and forgive me, but the names are, okay, but the names are hilarious and wonderful and realistic and possible. How do they appear to you, or do you think about them?
It's really hard to. I like names, you know, and I like nicknames, you know, and of course, you know, when you're like at street level, people make up nicknames. They know you, you know, as John, you know, but maybe you stutter and they say, "Hey, John, you know, maybe it's that. Maybe you're somebody like Ezekiel, and they say, "Oh, this is great," because Easy have the hardest life, so we're gonna call him Easy. Or Mouse, you know, Mouse will kill you in a minute, so we're gonna call him Mouse because he's, you know, like, so people might think he's timid.
Which might think he's timid. Which came first, Easy or Ezekiel? And what about that middle name?
And the Easy came first in that story. Mouse looks at him and say, "Hey, Easy, how you doing?" I didn't realize for a very long time that his name was Ezekiel. You know, but you know, it's the same thing. That's, you meet somebody on the street, everybody calls somebody a name, and you don't, you know, find out that their real name is Hubert forever. You know what I mean? Say, Hubert?
And what about his middle name?
Porterhouse, yeah. That was his dad, I'm sure. He said, you know, he's a prime cut. That's my son.
And see, you wonder why people are laughing when you say things. You know, I just loved Grey Dawn. And I loved it because it's tender and poignant and funny, and Easy has such a heart, and his relationship with the novice detective and with his daughter is beautiful, and his search for love, I insist. How did you know that book was, what do you think about the book, and how did you feel when it was finished? How did you know it was finished?
Oh, well, you know, God, you know, there's so much to say there. Let me try to. Number one, how do you know when a novel is finished? A lot of people, especially young men, will ask me that question. They'll say, how do you know when a novel is finished? And I said, well, you know, you write it, and then you read it, and you see what's wrong, you change it, and you see what's wrong, you change it, and you see what's wrong, you change it. You do it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. You go through it, you see what's wrong, and you change it. Finally, one day, you read through the book, you see what's wrong, and you can't fix it. Because if you did this, that would go wrong. And if you did this, that would go wrong. And if you did this, that's not really what he would do. You know, and you're stuck. That's when the novel is finished. You know, that's when.
No, but do you say you don't say, well, there you go, that's as good as it's going to get, or do you think, yeah, this could kind of work?
Oh, it works. It works, but there's things wrong with it. The thing is, you know, the idea of perfection shouldn't ever come in when you're thinking about a novel. There is no perfect novel. And if there was, it wouldn't be as good as all these imperfect novels out here, because life is imperfect. Life is imperfect, and people are. And my understanding of things is, and yours, right? You know, and so when you identify with characters, with their flaws, with their mistakes, you know, that's when you really begin to, you know, to inhabit your humanity.
Just going to let that sit a minute, because that's what you do so beautifully in Grey Dawn. that, you inhabit the humanity of Easy Rawlins. And I wonder if you feel that too.
I do. And one of the things I'll say, Grey Dawn is 1972, and this is really when the feminist movement starts to grow, and that there are a lot of people who are speaking, and women start to think differently. And part of it is like a capitalist conspiracy. I'm going to say that. It's a capitalist conspiracy because everybody's salary or the worth of everybody's dollar has gone down, and women have to go to work. They can't be just sitting at home with the vacuum cleaner and the AM radio. They have to go to work, and so when women start going to work, they start to think about being different people. Now there's a lot of women criminals in the book who they do that, but also like there's his assistant Niska, who wants to be a detective. She wants to be a private detective. Easy doesn't. I never even heard of a private detective. Never. That's a woman. Never imagined it. But now he knows, even though he doesn't really believe she can become one, he does think that he owes it to her to give her the opening to do that without involving himself. He said, or whatever you want, okay, this is what you do, that's what you do, go out, let's see how you do it. Now, he doesn't expect her to succeed, but she will.
And he knows that because there's this gorgeous moment in the book when he realizes that she looks afraid of what's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me feel like you wanted Easy to say, well, yep, life is hard, this is rough, and now that you recognize this could work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because if she doesn't understand that it's rough, then, it's like that, that policeman who might shoot you when you tell him that you have a weapon and you have a license for it. And they still are so scared of you, they shoot you.
And there are just so many meaningful moments in Grey Dawn. And talk just for 2 seconds about his relationship with his daughter and why that's important to you.
Well, he's adopted this daughter. Her father, her grandfather killed her father and her mother and wanted to kill her when she was just a baby. And Easy saved her. That was the thing. And, if you save somebody's life, well, then you have to work with it. You can't just let them go. And so he's raised her, and he's given her everything that he can. And it's a hard thing for somebody who feels, Easy, because Easy at one point in the last book, somebody couldn't pay him, so they gave him a Rolls Royce, and he tried to drive it around in Los Angeles. Black man driving a Rolls Royce around in Los Angeles without somebody with a mink coat in the back seat, they're gonna be in trouble. And he just kept getting stopped and stopped. He's trying to overcome those problems for his daughter and his son, Jesus. Yeah.
Well, the book is marvelous, and the book is irresistible.
Thank you.
And if you haven't read any of the other of the Easy Rawlins books, that's ridiculous, but you can start with this one, right?
Yeah, well, in all the books, and one of the good things about the books, you can read all of them work on their own. That's one of those technical things that you have to.
I have a million more questions for you, but I see that we're running out of time. How about you all? Who has a question for Walter Mosley? Yes, in the front row. Who's your greatest inspiration?
My greatest inspiration is indeed my father. There's no question. My father did everything, he did everything for me.
You said he read Devil in a Blue Dress.
He read Devil in a Blue Dress.
And what did he say? Was he proud of you?
Here's the conversation with me and my dad. When he said, Walter, I always knew you was going to be a writer. And I said, Dad, you told me to stop being a writer because I'd never make anything with it. And he said, I know. And I'm really proud of you. It was like, that's the thing about perfection, it's like, he didn't care. He just loved it,
Who else has a question?
Sorry. One of the things I really appreciate your work is that you go outside genre. You do all kinds of different genres. You've done sci-fi. You've done. And I think I'm not a completist, but I think I've read most of it. My question to you is, what's a genre that you have not yet tried that you would like to try, and why?
Well, you know, it is true, because genre is really the root of fiction. To write what kind of story you're telling. Are you going to tell an adventure? Are you going to tell a love story? Are you going to, all these things. I think I've done just about everything. I haven't gone far enough into Western. I've done little tiny things, but not enough. And I just have a book coming out in May called Galen, A Romance in Black, and it's a black romance, and that was a big one on my list. I think that, and then to come back to Westerns, I think I'll just keep on going around. I did erotica, which you gotta do. It's a genre that you have to try. I'm told. Yeah, and so once Galen comes out, and people don't hate me too much, I'll be satisfied.
Galen?
Galen. Galen. That was a name that just came to me, but it's a name, it exists.
Well, you made it be one, right? I mean, that's interesting, isn't it, that what you create exists?
Yep, that's true.
That's profound, isn't it? Who else has a question?
I have one. Right here.
Over there.
Okay, I have a question about research. You said when you wrote that first sentence, you'd never been to Louisiana and you didn't know what a fire ant was. Did you at some point go to Louisiana and meet fire ants, or and you were a computer programmer and you're writing about a detective? So how did you learn all the things you need?
I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
I'm really interested why you're asking it.
Because I'm a writer, and research is always kind of daunting. Like when you have a great idea for a story that you're writing, the story's going great, and you're like, oh, God, but now I have to learn all this stuff. Because it is bigger than your head, bigger than your brain.
Research, it's worth a moment to pay attention to. To begin with, I hate research. I hate research. I hate studying, because there's no real such thing as truth, about anything. You find out today this, and then tomorrow something completely the opposite was true. It's back and forth and up and down, all that stuff. I don't like it, and you can get lost in it. What I do is I write a book. And then when I finish writing it, I go back through it and I wonder, I said, well, how can that be true? Did they really do that in 1840? And I do that, and I try to make it work. And then you have editors and stuff like that. You'll still things will be wrong, but mostly it'll be right. And people, a long time ago, people read books to learn things because they didn't have radio, they didn't have newspapers, they didn't have television, they didn't have any of that stuff, So you could write Moby Dick, and you had to explain what happened on a whaling ship. But you don't do that anymore. Novels are mostly psychological, how people learn and feel and respond to each other.
What's the goal of your novels? Entertainment, storytelling, theme?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if a goal is entertainment, but you have to entertain in order for people to read it. It has to be interesting, in order for people to read it. My goal is to reveal, I guess the main goal is to reveal character. And the thing after that is to have a plot that resolves itself. And when I think of it, I call a plot the structure of revelation.
Plot is the structure of revelation.
Yeah.
That's perfect. That's all we need to know. Who else has two more questions?
I have a question about what's upstream of pouring a character out. It feels like there's some people watching involved, and I didn't know whether there's more implicit people watching or if you kind of make a study of people to get the interiority that you can see even through a mask. Through behavior.
But are you talking about me doing people watching just in life?
Yeah.
I'm very interested in people, and I'm kind of afraid of them too. You know, the people, you know, you see, oh, who's that? Well, what's this? Well, who's over there? Well, you know, but I don't do that in order to write. I just do that. You know, I get very interested in people, also in creatures. You know how creatures act with each other, and often I'll take, you know, how you know, a friend of mine has a cat, and her cat loves big pit bulls. And a pit bull will be walking down the street, you know, with its owner, and the cat will walk right up to it and put its nose against the pit bull's nose and scare the hell out of this pit bull. Like, what's going on, you know? And you know, the fact that I think it's funny and that I'm interested in it means that I can put that on people. You know, and you know, children and creatures are so much more honest than we are, you know. The way they move, the way they sing, the way they talk, the way they're interested in stuff, you know. Hey, what's that? What's your butt smell like? Let me, you know. It's like, it's kind of great, you know. So yes, I witness a lot of things, but it's the lens, you know, that I have that makes the action.
Yes.
I love your stories, and the descriptions are always so vivid of someplace I've never been. But my favorite part is the food. You have all these restaurants, sometimes holes in the wall, that illegal, and sometimes regular restaurants. Did these all exist? Did you make them all up?
I make a lot of it up. It's true, and some of them exist. You know, when I was a kid, my father, he was really kind of high-strung, but you could never tell that if you looked at him. But he was. He was, you know, he had a hard life. And my mother would come home from work after he did. So he would come home from work like at 3:30 or 4 and cook dinner every day, every night, for my whole childhood. Every day. Some days it might be black-eyed peas and pigtails, you know. Some days he would make an Indian dinner. I mean, he loved cooking, and he was really good at it, and he paid a lot of attention to it. He never said anything to me about it, but I watched him, and I also cooked. You know, I just loved it, and I love food, and I love the way that people handle food, and it's something that people do. And if there's anything that you find that a lot of people have in common, using it always is very helpful in plumbing the emotions of those people.
Because your readers will say, "Oh, I like food too. I understand this. I understand a family. I understand a dinner."
I like food. I hate squash. You know, whatever it is that, you know, that they think. You know, it can be the good, it could be the bad, but I identify with it. Is the thing. So yes, some of it exists, some of it doesn't. You know, and a lot of it is just, you know, parties, people, you know, cooking. You know, when I lived in Vermont, which I did, people in New Hampshire, I lived in Vermont for 7 years, and we would have, you know, like every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, you know, 50 people, everybody made something else, and we just all brought it, and we got together. You know, cooking itself became a celebration.
And this is a celebration. Do we have time for, no? Yes? One more? Okay.
I have a question about the genre and the history of the genre. This summer, I've reread for the first time since high school the novels of Dashiell Hammett. And you are so excellent at opening windows on racial issues. And in Dashiell Hammett, of course, it's almost 100 years ago now, not the Continental Op stories or novels so much, but the others. Race is very present, and to contemporary readers, kind of appalling. and yet not surprising, okay? It was 100 years ago. And so I'm interested in how far the genre has come since Dashiell Hammett, and if there's a modern edition of Dashiell Hammett, how do you read those? How do you react to those? And what might you say about how far the genre that E.Z. Rawlins stands in has come over all this time?
Well, let's start off by saying there's nobody who's gone beyond Dashiell Hammett in the work. He was a master, you know. He was, you know, I mean, he's one of the only people who ever wrote a book. Like, you know, John Huston was a writer, and he wanted to be a writer, but he also wanted to be a director, but he's a writer. And so they hired him to make the movie, you know, the movie, The Maltese Falcon. He read the book, and then he went to his secretary, because writers had secretaries then. Who knew? And he said, okay, every time there's dialogue, just write who said it, and then write the dialogue. And she typed that up, and that was the movie. It was amazing. I've never seen a movie. You could sit there with the book and read it and see it. He was that spare and that visual in writing. So, but I think that things have changed. You know, that a lot of times writing reflects the moods, the positive, the negative. And our job now today is to challenge what people think we should be saying, if we feel that they are betraying truth. You know, because a lot of times people say, well, you know, they'll say that, well, they're being very open and very liberal, or I don't know, conservative or whatever. But the idea is we're talking about humans and their own foibles, and that's what Hammett did. And I just love him. Also Ross MacDonald, also Raymond Chandler, but to a lesser degree. I think that the best way to grow is to understand these great writers. You know, that's what I think. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but it is what I think, so.
I keep saying one last question, and people keep raising their hands. Somebody tell me when to stop.
There's
This will
one.
be the last question.
Yes?
Yes. So this isn't about writing so much. I heard an amazing interview with you. I'm from New York City originally. I grew up in New York, but I've lived in California for the last 30 years. And it was about shedding skins, shedding homes, like shedding skins. I don't know if you recall this at all, but that's a very simplistic reduction of the interview. But I'm curious, because your latest book says that you live in Brooklyn and in Santa Monica.
Uh-huh.
I do have my own motives in this. I love cities. I'm of cities. I feel like cities are under attack right now. I don't feel like it. They are. I'm wondering what you consider home right now, and what is a city to you, and what it means, I guess, in your writing. But it's kind of a vague question, sorry. But you are of two of the cities that I love, and I'm wondering how you describe them to other people, I guess.
Well, you know, place is so interesting for writers because we're all in a place, and we're also in a time. We're in a time and a place, and it's very important to understand those times and places. A lot of people come up to me and they'll say, when I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't understand it. And then somebody told me to read E.Z. Rawlins, and now I understand it, which amazes me because I wasn't, you know, attempting to do that. But really, I'm going to sound like I come from, you know, like I'm out in some Western in the 1840s. Like, I'm going to say this. Home is where the heart is, right? That's where home is. Home is where you're centered, you're loved, you love, you see, you know, it's that. You know, anywhere can be home. You know, you could be out in the plains in Wyoming. That's home. You know, I mean, and that's how I feel about a place. I met a guy in New Orleans who was a taxi driver, and he was a young guy, and when the hurricane hit, Katrina, he moved to Atlanta. It was so funny because he said to me, man, I moved to Atlanta. You know, you can make some good money there. I was making $7 an hour. I went, what? And, you know, because, you know, they don't pay you too much in New Orleans. And so, but he came back to live in New Orleans, and I said, so why did you come back? He said, oh, man, New Orleans, that's home. You know, and that's the feeling, right? And it's a feeling about any place I write about, whether I'm there or not there. You know, you have to, because it's about loving yourself. You know, it's about seeing yourself, and if you can get that in your writing, I know you weren't asking about writing, but if you can get that in your writing, you know, then that's good. You know, it's like a kid. You know. You take, you know, let's say parents, you know, they have some kind of anger issues or something like that, and they beat their kids or whatever they do. The city comes and they take the kid away. I work with a great child psychiatrist named Bruno Bettelheim, and I was assisting him. He was teaching teachers, and one teacher said, "I'm having this big problem. This boy, his parents were mistreating him, so I had to put him in another home. But he keeps on lighting matches in the ceiling, trying to burn the house down." And Bettelheim said, "Well, he wants his parents. He wants his home." And he said, "But the state won't let me have anything to do with that." And he says, "Yeah, that's why I never take state cases." You know, and all of that is home, right? All of that, the state, the child, the parents who aren't quite right, you know, but the child, what's home to that kid is home. L.A. and New York. I love Brooklyn. I love L.A. You know, but it could be different. I could be someplace else. And I would have to bring with me whatever that feeling was.
It has been such a treat to talk with you. Everybody in the audience is just leaning forward, listening to you. You've been absolutely marvelous. I want to hang on for 1 second before I do my final goodbyes, because talk about time and place. It's time for us to close. I have 2 bits of housekeeping, and then I'll thank you, Walter. I am told to say, if your ticket comes with a book, don't forget to pick it up. If your ticket does not come with the book, you can still buy a book, or 2 or 3, no pressure, it's just our careers, yes, right? And the livelihood of Gibson's bookstore, who depend on you for their existence. So, as my agent always requires me to say, a signed book makes a great gift. So
Christmas gift.
Exactly, or any kind of holiday that you can make up. Also, 2 more things. One is, tomorrow at the book festival, it begins, we hope, that everyone can move their cars, so important, you all. Move your cars from South Main Street after tonight's event, because the tent company is going to be arriving at 10 to put the tents up. They do it that way. So you want to be gone before the tent company comes. That gives you plenty of time to get a book and have it signed. Walter, you are such a rock star. Talk about home. You have made us all feel so much at home. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great. I really love it. Yeah.